Hello and welcome to Web Relates. Today we're looking at the Petty Revenge subreddit. Our first story is by Obvious Moose. Selfish husband never knew. My now ex-husband was very selfish, always putting his wants before mine. He was also a hypochondriac. After we started dating, we decided to move in together and he insisted I rehome my cat because he said he was allergic. I don't think he was allergic, but I think he believed he was, so I stupidly rehomed my cat. Fortunately, I found a very good home for her, so I'm okay with that, but it was incredibly selfish for him to ask me to do that. After we were married, he suddenly decided he was allergic to our goose down pillows and comforter. I loved them. I tried to argue with him, telling him that we had been using these for over a year, so how could he suddenly be allergic? And he just got very angry and told me I didn't care about him. So I went to Bed Bath & Beyond and bought hypoallergenic pillows and comforter. I made sure he knew I had done this, and I put the pillows on the bed and the comforter in the duvet cover. The next day, when he wasn't around, I replaced them with the real thing I had hidden in the closet, and took the cheap stuff back to the store since I had left the tags on. We were together for several more years, and he never knew. Our next story is by Material Solid. Keep pestering me to tie into my fence? Say goodbye to the fence. A previous home I owned had previously been rented, and that tenant had thrown up a quick little chain-link fence for his dog. Had the corners right at the corner of the house. Just a quick fix that got the job done. I don't have a dog, so fence, no fence, didn't matter to me. The day I moved in, my very young neighbour came over and asked since she ran a daycare from her house. That was a whole other nightmare. She'd really like to put up a fence. And to save money, could they just tie into mine and save the cost of fencing that entire side of the fence? Now, I may be younger, but I'm not dumb. I knew that if they did that, they would be fencing in part of my property, and after a certain number of years with their maintenance of it, they would then own that property between our houses. Now, we're not talking a lot here. The houses were maybe 15 feet across, but if they did that, they would own everything up to the edge of my house. Even my air conditioner unit would be on their property. So, I told her this, and said no. She cannot now or ever tie into the fence. Mentioned that interaction with my realtor, and she about threw a fit. Seems this person tried asking her the same thing, and she told her the same thing. Now, if this was just a one-time trying her luck thing, it wouldn't be a big deal. But she kept asking off and on for a few years, and I kept saying no. Even the husband came over to ask, maybe to intimidate a single woman? Still said no. I even did the research and got the actual property line map that showed exactly where our property lines were. One day I saw a whole bunch of chain link fencing in their backyard, but not nearly enough to fence all the sides they needed to do. They were going to try and tie in anyway, despite me repeatedly telling them no. So, that night I took it down, rolled up the fence, and dug up every single fence post. Now the neighbour had to come out and watch the kids she was supposed to be watching, because my fence wasn't there anymore, so the kids had more avenues to escape. Plus it took them a bit longer to order more of the chain link fence and posts they suddenly needed. When I sold the house, I gave the new owner, a single man, a care package which included the official property line map and a note to watch those neighbours like a hawk. My realtor, yep, same one, I loved her so much I used her again, knew the entire story and gave him the rundown as well. Our next story is actually a comment by Ambitious List. Many years ago, on a hot summer day, our neighbours across the street held a yard sale. As we opened our garage door on our way to take the kids for ice cream, we see a camper completely blocking our driveway. We figured the owners were at the garage sale and would only be a few minutes. Wrong. We waited 10 minutes and they didn't show. So I called the neighbours and asked them if they could ask these people to move their camper. They said they wouldn't be long. I heard one of the camper owners shout that we should mind our own business and that they'd leave when they're ready. Another 5 minutes passes and the kids are wanting ice cream. The passenger window and a bedroom window in the camper were open because it was hot. I'd had enough, so I set up the lawn sprinkler and turned on the water. Not only did the spray cover our lawn, but the side of their camper. The owners eventually returned about 15 minutes later and were furious when they saw the water was hitting their camper. Our next-door neighbour, an on-duty police officer on lunch break, pulled into his driveway and came over to ask what was going on. I explained how long we'd been waiting, that we'd asked them to move the vehicle and they refused. He told the camper driver to move his vehicle. Then he told him to provide his driver's license, vehicle ownership, insurance, and proceeded to write him a ticket for obstructing our driveway. To say the campers were unhappy would be an understatement. I thought I heard the passenger seat go squish as the person got in. Our next story is by Atrocity. I'll show you how it's done. Okay, boss, let's see what you got. Since my last story about petty revenge was such a hit, I decided to write another one from my old days as a supervisor from a call center. Man, do I have a lot of stories from those days. So, circa 2013, there was this woman, around 40 years old or so. We will call Kay. Kay was different. Here are some of the ways she was just wired different. 1. Accused my fellow supervisor of altering the employee handbook while she was reading it. This was an online handbook. 2. Said our company was secretly a company who worked for the NSA or FBI. It changed daily. 3. Found wires loose on her desk and screeched to anyone around there were listening devices. A fellow employee put the wires there, wanting to see what would happen. I didn't see him do this, but was told after the fact. 4. Went to HR on me, saying, told her computers weren't for personal use and had to leave if she was clocked out. HR told her, yep, I was right. Enter a new manager. We'll call him Dan. Dan was a fun guy, a solid dude, but not a local guy. He was hired from the West Coast, as he had a great pedigree. Smart man, but a little full of himself, thinking he was the ultimate problem solver. After around 2 weeks as my boss, he came to me and my fellow supervisor, wanting to know what the problem was with Kay. We told him she had a little screw loose, and she couldn't be reasoned with. He told us we didn't know how to talk to her. He would personally show us how to handle someone like her. At this time, I worked the evening shift, 2 to 11 p.m. This is relevant. And my fellow supervisor worked 8 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. Managers were salary, so they didn't have a set time, and came and went as they pleased. Around 4 p.m., Kay had a huge issue. She was demanding she had paid time off for Columbus Day. This was not a paid holiday. She was told you can't have the day off as she has no vacation time left, and it isn't a paid holiday. She kept badgering and barking about how she deserves it, and we had zero right to not pay her on a federal holiday. Time for the petty revenge on Dan, but more of a lesson on I know these people better than you. I instant messaged Dan and asked if he was busy because Kay would love to talk to him. He asked what the issue was, and I told him about it all. I'll handle this. Send her in, he typed. Oh, this was going to be fun. Good thing I could see him in his office from my desk. I had a fantastic view. She went into his office around 4:10ish. My fellow supervisor told me good night around 4:30 and left. Around 9 p.m., my fellow supervisor called me to ask how Dan handled it. I told him, he's still in there with her. I kid you not, dear reader. He was in the office with her until 10 p.m. I watched the entire time. Him trying to talk to her, in what appeared to be a reasonable manner. I could see her gesturing wildly the entire time, probably about this or that. His face would go from amusement, bewilderment, frustration, and back to amusement. I watched him trying to get out of this whole ordeal. He knew he had bitten off more than he could chew. At 10 p.m., his door finally opened and Kay left. 5 minutes later, Dan headed out to the door with a look I can only describe as a man who survived a tornado. How'd that go, boss? I said. Jesus, you were right. Next time, send her to HR, he muttered. Now the tale of Kay doesn't end here, and perhaps I'll tell the story of the email threats on another subreddit. But the old boss got the message. Listen to us when we tell you. You don't want this headache. Alright guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers, have a good one.